Good afternoon again, Twitch. I'm here with Richard Molds and Richard Crowley, and we're going to talk about AWS KMS. Before that, please, Richards, introduce yourselves.
Hey, I'm Richard Molds, so I'm the Principal Product Manager for AWS Key Management Service, sometimes called KMS.
And I'm Richard Crowley, Principal Engineer at Slack and the architect of Slack Enterprise Key Management, which we just launched last week.
Congratulations. Richard, for those people watching who aren't necessarily familiar with KMS, can you tell us a little bit more about the service and what it's used for?
Sure, absolutely. So KMS is an AWS service. It allows customers to generate encryption keys and to manage access to those encryption keys in a hardened service. So KMS integrates with more than 50 AWS services, so all the ones you've heard of, S3, RDS, EC2. So if you choose to encrypt your data as it's stored in any of those services, KMS manages the keys that ultimately get to protect and unlock access to that data.
And can you talk a little bit about some of the customer success stories around KMS?
Sure, so KMS is used obviously very broadly. We're getting to the point now where most customers choose to use encryption as they store data in AWS. There's an incredible amount of data stored, obviously, in many, many, many different services in AWS. Encryption is often a mandated requirement. Data privacy laws, data breach disclosure laws. Just good housekeeping means you should be storing data, any sort of data, in a secure fashion. So encryption essentially makes that data useless if that data is ever lost or accessed inappropriately. The big challenge when you encrypt data is how on earth do you control these keys? Because now these keys literally become the keys to the kingdom. If somebody can get their hands on these keys, they can get access to the data. So KMS enforces control mechanisms through policies around those keys, and KMS is physically protected so that access to key material, either externally from KMS or even from folks that work in the KMS team, is impossible. So you talk about successful use cases. So we're here obviously with Slack today. They've just launched a great new feature, which I think adds a whole new dimension of control and visibility to the Slack service. It's honoring that they've chosen to integrate with KMS to make that possible.
Yeah, Richard, tell us a little bit about the feature that you've launched and how it uses KMS.
Sure. So Slack EKM is the answer to a long-asked question from our customers for control of the encryption keys that we use to encrypt their messages and files that they're entrusting to us in Slack. And we've integrated with AWS KMS as the first of potentially several offerings, but by far the highest leverage, easiest to integrate, and most security bang for our buck that we could get. We built this system using the pretty standard envelope encryption kind of pattern that KMS encourages to allow customers to have visibility into how their keys are being used by putting them in CloudTrail and CloudWatch, but also control over how their keys are being used using the policies that Richard alluded to that allow them to control, as how we've built it, access by channel, by period of time, or they can sort of revoke access to all their keys across their whole organization. And that flexibility has been really important in convincing customers that this is the right balance of security, capabilities, and risk management with the productivity gains that they can expect from Slack.
Now, as the name kind of implies, this seems like a widely requested feature from enterprise customers that use Slack. Is it useful to customers that are not necessarily at the enterprise scale or don't self-select to identify as enterprise?
Certainly. I think it's called enterprise key management because if we called it much of anything else, it wouldn't signify that it's meant to be part of a risk management program that typically more evolved companies start to implement. So yes, we're already managing encryption keys, but now we're managing encryption keys in a way that an evolved risk management program can use to enhance their processes, not merely check boxes.
And can you elaborate on some of the ways that KMS has helped you achieve the ambitious goals that Slack EKM has set out to achieve?
Sure. So when I set out to design this feature, I was experimenting with HSMs, with various sort of bring your own, roll your own kinds of solutions, and found that performance was a serious concern, and that KMS helped to amortize and make that a real benefit to us, to help keep Slack feeling fast and snappy like Slack should, and gave customers all the controls they needed to make their risk management decisions.
Richard, do you have any closing thoughts you want to add to that?
Sure. So obviously what Slack have done is a great feature. A lot of customers require it, but it fundamentally applies to anybody that's building a system that stores data on behalf of their customers. So any Amazon partner or SaaS service provider using Amazon could follow a similar path. They can perform the encryption, protect the data, but give their customers more control over the keys that protect that information.
Thank you very much. And we're going to be right back